What is going on, everybody? It is Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. We are here for the Astro-Babble. We're here to talk about some charts. We're here to talk about some star stuff. Yeah, it's going to be really fun. So if you would like to donate your chart to the live streams, please feel free to private message me your birth date, place, and exact birth time. I'll add you to the list. The list is rather long, so please be patient. But I'm doing 5 a day, 3 times a week, and we're chugging through the list as well. Also have a new online class on my website if you're interested in learning astrology. Just published the Planetary Altars class, which was super fun. 2 hours of how to remediate through planetary worship or planetary reverence. So that's super fun. I also am still accepting clients, so feel free to visit my website, scorpiorisingastrology.com, and we can always do a one-on-one consultation. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Let's go ahead and pull up our charts, and we will get started. Okay. So our first chart of the morning is Ujjaya. I love that name, and I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. So pretty. Just absolutely adore that. So let's take a peek at this chart. We have a Capricorn ascendant applying to the moon in Capricorn. Oh, and a Gemini stellium. Gemini stellium. With Mercury in Gemini. Venus Gemini, Mars Gemini, Saturn Gemini, and North Node Gemini, all in the 6th house of work, health and pets. Oh my god, shut up. And the MC is forming a trine to that Gemini Saturn who is ruling the chart. Oh, I can't get over this. Ujjaya, you're such a fucking workaholic. Such a workaholic. Like, you are absolutely obsessed with what you do for a living. I can't. You know, the Capricorn on the ascendant, it gives us that cardinal earth energy, which is by nature going to be pretty determined. By nature is going to be pretty business savvy and always looking to kind of improve and to prove themselves to the world through accomplishments. The moon in Capricorn here, you know, it is technically the moon in her opposite sign of Capricorn. It's one of her not so favorite placements because the moon is all about being touchy-feely. And for you to put that moon in Capricorn in the 1st house, you know, part of your identity is actually how apathetic you can be and how much you don't care. I disagree, though, because we all know that you're just kind of a squishy molten lava chocolatey center, which is just sweet and delicious, but you protect it behind this kind of fortress, this castle with a moat with alligators and drawbridges and whatnot. So as long as you understand that, like, apathy is a very useful tool for somebody who has moon in Capricorn in the 1st house, like, I get it, it's fine. But by no means is it a long-term excuse to shut down your emotions, right? And that can be really dangerous because of this Gemini stellium in the 6th house of work. You've also put the ruler of your chart here, Saturn, applying to an MC in the 10th. Like, you are so driven to success. You are so much about the climb. You are so much about what it takes to get your to-do list done. And especially with Gemini ruling this whole process, like, there's always going to be something else to the list. There's always going to be something else to pursue. There's always going to be another angle, Ujjaya. There's always going to be something else. And that's the trap, right? That's the trap that your chart kind of finds you in. Is we have this Capricorn moon in the 1st house of self, which is all about kind of guarding what you're feeling, but you're also guarding your intuition, right? And if you don't let the moon feel what's around you, then you can't be guided in one direction or another. It almost takes on this hyper rationality with Mercury and Gemini ruling your 6th house of work. It can also spread you in a million different directions, and then you're like, well, which direction do I go? But you've locked away the part of you that really knows your truth. And that can be super difficult because it is a valid strategy to build your identity around what you do for a living. right? And to be the best at what you do. Those are all admirable things. Those are all very stoic things, very objective and rational values. Does it make it healthy in the long term? Does it make you a well-rounded individual? I would argue not. So we just need to make sure that you're taking a break. We need to make sure that you're investing in your yin, your rest, your ability to receive, your emotional connection, that you have kind of worked into your schedule these lazy days where you just kind of consider and contemplate and not need to act or do or be or have, right? But instead just to kind of tap in and pay attention and to water all of those placements that naturally get tuned out in the hyper-aggressive search for what's next, right? Because it is a never-ending battle. You've put your sun in Taurus in the 5th house of creativity, children, parenting. Yeah, that really does make your ego super happy when you work with children. But it also, you know, Taurus sun in the 5th paired with all of your work placements does kind of add to that idea of I know what I'm doing, and you embracing that kind of harsh paternal aspect of sit down and shut up, you know, let daddy work, which again can be fine, but it can also be toxic with all of your other placements combined. There's a certain amount of rule, there's a certain amount of ritual, there's a certain amount of routine, perfectly fine, right? But when it comes to doing that day in, day out, the harsh earth reality that you're exposing yourself and others to, it becomes a little much. We need to water that down just a bit. And that's where your 7th house of relationships comes in, right? Because you're really looking for somebody who can be your emotional voice. You have probably the best, arguably the best planetary placement in all of astrology in your 7th house of relationships. You have an exalted Jupiter. Jupiter in Cancer in the 7th house of relationship is luck, it's expansion, it's brilliance, it's the perfect vessel of the benevolent ruler. Yeah. And it is a perfect placement for somebody who is so focused on work to have that counterforce of somebody who's so focused on doing good for others. You know, Cancer is the compassionate sign, and Jupiter just makes things super big, but also super rich, right? And it's kind of like that perfect king-queen, like not assigning genders, but that perfect pairing of strictness and ease, of yin and yang, of darkness and light, of tui and la, push and pull. And I think that this is just absolutely perfect. So when you find that other half, when you start to unlock those pieces of yourself through the company of others who are more emotionally intelligent than you, and you start to co-claim your throne with them, that's what's really going to set you into a really nice balance. But you need somebody who has enough watery intelligence in order to help you through that process and to talk you out of your hyper-rational, hyper-doing, very, very much about the chase and the game mentality. Right? Okay. So that's that. Thank you so much, Ujaya, for donating your chart to the live streams. I very, very much appreciate it. Thank you, Delia. I appreciate you joining on. Let's go ahead and we'll move to chart number 2. Is that chart number 2? Nope, just kidding. Chart number 2 is a little... Adam, stop trying to jump the line. I see you. You're trying to jump the line. Energetically. We're not having this, Adam. We're going to Alexis next. Okay. Alexis. Hello, darling. How are you? Okay, Alexis, so let's talk. So we've got a Taurus rising. Ruler of the chart is Venus in Sagittarius in the 8th house. Fun. Where's that square coming from? Ooh, Ooh, that Mars and Aries square Neptune in the ninth. Getting lost in those spiritual pursuits, eh? Hmm. Moon and Leo down in the fourth. Making a trine to the North Node. Okay, I see it. I see it. Okay, so we've got complication. We've got a lot of kind of back and forth. It feels like we're in a volleyball game in your chart, Alexis. So we've got this really strong and determined Taurus on the ascendant. It gives you that fixed earth quality of, steadfastness and normalcy and ritual and routine. And I love it. It's a very grounding placement, but it also allows you to be a rock for others. The ruler of your chart, Venus in Sagittarius, is up in the 8th house of death, taxes, estates, business, other people's money. It's a very finite house. It's very much about dealing with the realities of life. You've also put Saturn here and Uranus here. And I think, above all else, you've designed your life to be prepared for the sky to fall and for the other shoe to drop. Like, you're very much in that mode of, let's consider all the ways that everything could go wrong. But that also gives you this weird, twisted sense of stability, right? And I love that. I think that that's a valid strategy. I think that that's super fun. But you being touched by death at an early age, you also having, let's see, where's Jupiter? Jupiter in the 11th. Friends pass away. But yeah, we have that, just the ruler in the chart in the 8th, those 8th house topics of death, taxes, estates, business, other people's money. It's going to be a big theme throughout the life. So the more that you start to master and lean into those details of, like, what's in the contract, what's in the will, what's in the estate, that's going to give you a large leverage in your life. It also wouldn't surprise me if you decided to work in the tax and estate law field because of that, or work with death on a regular basis. Because the Venus who rules your chart from the 8th is also ruling your 6th house of work. But you're not really here to do that work, are you? Are you? Interesting. Your North Node is in the 12th, in the house of hidden enemies, hospitalizations, therapy, deeper karmic healing, along with your Mars and Aries. So interesting. You've decided to kind of take a 180, and although you're very good at these things that you've decided to potentially turn into how you make your money, right? Because how we make our money is often very different from what our passion or vocation is in life. You've decided to really focus on the 12th house of deeper healing as a major area of focus. Major area of focus. Yeah, that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So yeah, in what you do for a living, there might be multiple ways that you learn how to kind of work through the cracks and help other people in kind of traumatic life circumstance and help pull them up from the brink of that kind of river of Styx moment, for sure. Now, what really kind of irks me about this chart, and like stop, like sudden stop, like is this Mercury in Capricorn, Sun in Capricorn, MC Neptune in Capricorn. Because I think it's really excessive. I think that, your mind being so stubborn and earthy, but also driven, I think your Sun kind of balancing that as well and saying, like, hey, this is all about business. It brings in a double round of that Earth to complement your ascendant, and really says, hey, these are the rules. I don't make the rules. These are the rules. But then also your placements, like your warrior energy in the 12th house and your North Node in the excuse me, your North Node in the 12th house, like, you're here to also learn how to break the rules, right? So you learn the rules, you study the rules, you apply the rules, you know how the rules work, and then you're like, screw the rules. I'm going to save you from the jaws of death. Like, it's such an interesting combination that you've molded yourself so fiercely and so strictly, and then you've also, in the same lifetime, decided to shatter that mold and break that mold and bring forward just this massive amount of rebel energy into your chart. Fascinating, truly. And then you've got a lovely Jupiter in Pisces in his home sign in the 11th house of friendships. Lean on your friends heavily, heavily, because all of the people that you surround yourself in your social circles are going to be of good of good standing, and they will be very, very good allies for you. You tend to have good friend selection. And they will be tremendous allies for you, which may also turn into clients because that Jupiter is ruling the 8th house, um, and things of that nature. This Moon in Leo is kind of the wild card of the bunch in the 4th house of home and family. You know, after a day of rules, you really want to kind of close the curtains and throw a party in your sacred space, and I get that. Um, but also, we have to remember kind of your ancestral bloodline and remember the lessons of your family. Um, because they always taught you to shine bright, and they always taught you to be fierce and unapologetic and to help those who are less fortunate than you and be that kind of noble Leo that is in your 4th house of home and family, that bloodline placement. But also, we need to understand that the way that you do that is by cultivating rules. And through cultivating rules, you develop rulership, right? That's beautiful. Somebody write that shit down. Through rules, we have rulership. Ooh, that's delicious. And not in a weird power hungry way, but like you use the rules to break the rules, for sure. Relationships are a little bit sticky because you're attracted to those who are broken and have toxic baggage. Relationships will become infinitely easier once you master your own bullshit, but then also once you hit halfway through the life. So you're kind of in training period, really, until about 50, and then the real relationships will begin because you'll be able to partner with people who have done their inner work. Interesting. Thanks, Alexis. I appreciate you donating your chart to the live stream. This has been absolutely wonderful. Just making sure we don't have any comments. It doesn't look like it from Facebook. Thank you to everybody who's joining in on Instagram as well. I recently had a flood of new followers because one of my TikTok videos blew up. So for those of you who are just following me on Facebook and Instagram and social media, welcome. This is what I do. Okay, Adam, you line jumper. You were trying to cut ahead. I saw you. But let's take a Pikachu, shall we? Oh, that's interesting. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Oh, all right. We can work with that. So you have your ascendant in Libra, which naturally sugarcoats the chart. I say that with all my Libra ascendants because it never ceases to amaze me when somebody has strong Libra placements, how they are graced by Venus. And when I say graced by Venus, what I mean is they'll walk into a room and everybody will immediately just get this whiff of them and they'll be like, oh, I'm glad they're here, right? It's and I've seen this in my friends with strong Libra placements, especially on the ascendant. It's like they can really do no wrong. They have a certain buffer of niceness that just woos everybody superficially, right? Um, people with strong Scorpio placements, people with heavy Earth placements, they can kind of see right through it and they know what's happening. But at the same time, it doesn't negate the fact that that Libra ascendant is just rather delicious. Then the North Node in the first house, one of the things about your chart, Adam, is you're really here to develop a core personality. You're really here to work on you. You're really here to work on partnering with your body. You're really here to work on just kind of being human in a human experience. The North Node in the first is all about your life's mission being tied to you having a sense of self-esteem, yeah, but really understanding that you being you is important this go around. You're building yourself up from, if you want to think of it as a past life experience or kind of like early childhood, you're building yourself up as somebody who has wants and needs that need to be honored and respected. And that can be a little bit difficult for that Libra placement on the ascendant because of that indecision factor that I know you get. Because it would be so much easier to forfeit your rights and your decisions and your power to somebody else in exchange for being more amicable. But that's not always the best route for you, darling. It's just not. And I think as you start to study and as you start to be exposed to the world, this will become more and more clear for you. So we have the ruler of your chart and the ruler of your sun in Taurus, being this Venus in Gemini in the ninth house of higher education, spirituality, travel, foreigners. It's the house of worldliness. It would also make you a pretty decent astrologer if you wanted to study it, because the ninth house is associated with astrology, and that Venus ruling them being in that mental sign of Gemini, which is very quick and intellectual and curious, and ruling your sun in Taurus in the eighth of death, but also of business. Like you would make a fair astrologer, for sure. But I think for you, the more you study spirituality, the more you expose yourself to foreign culture, the more you potentially travel the world. You'd be an excellent foreign exchange student. The more you expose yourself to what is possible, what is out there, right? The more you're going to start to grow, develop your preferences, and start to become more of that human that your chart is asking you to be. That Sun in Taurus in the 8th, as well as Mercury in Taurus in the 8th, gives you a very level head. Makes you very practical, very rational, very much about what are the rules, what are the circumstances, what is the context. You reading into things not because it's a compulsive habit, but in your view, it's a necessity to understand, like, where are the loopholes in this contract? Right? And your parents taught you that. Your parents taught you that in a very real way, because you understood at a young age that there are forces and there are powers that are outside of your control, but you've learned how to control them, haven't you, Adam? Through the studying and the witnessing of patterns and processes. And if you master your patterns and processes, then you can break the chains of discomfort. But here's the thing, Adam. Your poor little Virgo moon in the 12th house of hidden enemies that you've tucked away because your preferences are dangerous, because your ability to see the nuances and to manage resources you view as dangerous for some reason, right? If you're too nitpicky, you view that as dangerous because it goes against the mold. It goes against what everybody else has laid out before you. But I'm telling you that moon in Virgo, that is so much about management and paying attention to the fine details and developing preference, right? That is where your chart really comes alive. Yeah. But you've locked it away in the tallest tower, right? Or in this case, kind of the deepest abyss of the underworld of the 12th. But as you venture out into the world and as you start to gain these experiences through the ninth house and you grow spiritually, what I think you're going to start to realize is that your preferences are sacred, right? And what you want, not just for you, but for the world, yeah? The beauty and, in some cases, the injustices that you see in the world that you would like to change. That Virgo moon will be so good at identifying and making logical steps for you to correct, right? But if you let that Virgo wither away down in the underworld and you don't tap into that potential, it's just going to be really difficult for you. And one of the traps that I foresee in your chart is in the relationship dynamic. Because you're not really here to cultivate relationships from an intimate romantic perspective. You're more about developing your sense of self, which is something we already talked about. Instead, you have a very aggressive Mars and Aries and a very strict and potentially abusive Saturn in Aries in the 7th, as well as the South Node, the energy suck of the chart. Um, if you don't claim your power, Adam, your power will be claimed for you, my dear, my darling. Yeah? You who are perpetually lovely, graced by Venus, who is supposed to be exploring the world at this point and expanding your view, right? If you let somebody say, no, we're doing this, no, you have to think of it this way, and you succumb because it's easier to succumb, it's easier to bend, it's easier to change your shape. I know this as a triple water sign. I know this, right? But for you specifically, if you don't stand up for yourself and you allow specifically your intimate partners, the people that you draw the most into your inner circle, if you let them take your reins, that's where your chart really crumbles. So I highly encourage you to be extremely selective about who you let in, because they will be driving your preference. And their single-pointed view is not healthy for the expanded view that you're trying to adopt this go around, my dear. Okay. That was pretty fierce, and I apologize. But I think you needed a good talking to, Adam. I very, very much appreciate you and Allie for donating your chart, and I hope that that was helpful. Okay, just checking in on the comments. Nope, we're good. Okay, so let's go to Mandy. Mandy, how are you, my dear? Another Libra ascending? Gosh, can't you guys be... And a moon and... See, this is what I can't do. I can't plan this. But it's like the same formations, but different, right? We just had a Libra ascendant with a Virgo moon. And here we are, Libra ascendant, Virgo moon. Now the rest of the chart is totally different, but hilarious, right? Hilarious. Okay. So again, Libra ascendant, sugarcoating the chart, gracing you with Venus, giving you the initial impression of being sweet and lovely and delicious, right? Libra is the peacekeeper. Libra is the sign of justice. It's a very amicable sign. You walk into a room and everybody's like, oh, they're here, right? It's nice. But you have put Pluto in Libra retrograde in your first house, very close to your ascendant. You have brushed yourself with the underworld. Now this will turn into hidden power halfway through the life and actually give you a very fierce addition to that Libra ascendant, which I think is going to rock your world around 50 once that matures. But until then, it's going to feel like this piece of you that's kind of, again, locked away in the underworld that you really have to dig up and explore, right? There are parts of you that very few people will understand because of that Pluto, that king of all that is underground and hidden, the treasures that are buried, right? But what is even more delicious about this chart, which I can't freaking get over, is the ruler of your chart is an exalted Venus. Exalted Venus, children, at 0 degrees, just on the inside of that cusp, in Pisces, in the 6th house of work, co-present, mamma mia, with Jupiter in Pisces in the 6th house. Lord of abundance and lady of all that is lovely. Brilliant, Mandy. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. If you're not working in the arts, if you're not working in fashion, if you're not working in design, if you're not exercising your creative bliss, I don't know what you're doing with your life. The 6th house is the house of work and health and pets, so this is going to be a major sweet spot for you. The more you can surround yourself with furry friends, the more you can dive into your own health and help people with theirs, but also the idea of you working, oh my gosh, the level of grace and the level of beauty and the level of royalty that you have in your chart when it comes to your 6th house is just extravagant. I can't get over it. So lucky, so beautiful, so endearing. Um, I'm blown away, truly, truly. Uh, yeah, at the end of the day, oh yeah, so here's something that you might not know, Mandy. Down the road, you will need to activate your writing, teaching, and speaking skills. You will need to be more vocal about who you are, what you've been through, and how you've overcome those things. Because that Jupiter in the sixth house of work is ruling the third house of writing, teaching, communication, you will need to share your story. So I would prepare for that. The North Node is also here. Neptune and Sagittarius is also here, which frankly is one of the coolest placements for that formation. I love it. Normally, Neptune and Sagittarius is all about escapism, but when we see it in the third house of writing, teaching, communication, it's a beautiful expression of that creativity. It's the storyteller whose stories are so captivating and so delicious that it brings a level of glitter and shine and silver lining to the world that is just magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. Mm. Huh. Just as a side note, just as a side note, we do need to be careful about embezzlement. Embezzlement. Or people in your workplace that are doing weird things with money. Because that Venus in Pisces, who is so overly confident and overflowing in your sixth house of work, is applying to a trine with Uranus and Scorpio in the second house of finance, which makes me a little bit nervous. You need to be rather tight with your money, honey. Yeah, I would highly suggest you have a trusted bookkeeper, somebody who is very well known, maybe even getting a second opinion to make sure that your books, your money, your finances is taken care of. You could even rely on family for that, because family will tell you like it is. You have a really nice exalted Mars and Capricorn here in the fourth house of family. You know, you grew up with a certain amount of aggression, a certain amount of strictness, a certain amount of determination, but at the same time, it's beautiful. It really forged you into the person that you are today, and I find that super helpful. Although it was certainly a little bit too heavy at times with your delicate Libra ascendant. And again, we have the moon in Virgo, kind of trapped in the 12th house, being ruled by a stationed Mercury in Aquarius in the 5th, and Sun in Aquarius in the 5th. The topic of children will be difficult. The topic of children will be difficult. Your own independent creative desires will also be somewhat difficult. Because what happens is when you're working for someone else, the creativity flows magically. But when you're working for yourself, there's a halting. There's a creative genius that's slower. It's more fixed. It's not as easy to access. Your preferences are locked away in deep catacombs of the emotional space that, unless you've done enough self-work, and frankly, until I think you unlock that power of that Pluto in the first around 50, you're not going to be able to access those things, those powers that allow you to step forward into your own creative space. But until then, you're learning, right? Working for others, there's no shame in that. There's no shame in you allowing your gifts to flourish and you to play with these very abundant energies underneath the guise and the care of someone else. Yeah, so don't think that that's shameful in the least. Especially when your chart naturally says that when you are on your own, when you are independent, things get a lot tougher and the creative pipelines start to clog. Let's see. When it comes to relationships, because your family is so strong, I would highly suggest that you actually rely on them to find matches for you. Yeah, if you're looking. Because of that exalted Mars ruling your seventh house of relationships, they'll know who's best for you, and they'll actually give you some pretty strong candidates. I love that. And I think that's pretty much it for the chart. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Mandy. I appreciate you donating your chart to the live streams. Okay, we've got one more chart. And that chart is Marsha. Marsha. Ooh. Fascinating pileup. Ascendant Cancer, Venus Cancer, North Node Cancer, Saturn Cancer. Sun and Leo in the second. That Moon in Virgo again. This time conjoined Jupiter in Virgo with a Mercury retrograde in Virgo. Interesting. Quite fascinating, Marcia, if I do say so myself. There's a struggle with inspiration and creativity in your chart. There's a struggle here. And I think the struggle is because you're so good at caring for others. You know, you really do know how to put the mother and smother, I have to say. Because this Venus in Cancer is kind of like the octomom archetype. Normally it would be very much about kind of growing extra appendages to really kind of wrap everybody in a blanket and make sure that they're cared for, and that, you know, you're really giving them the sugar and the attention that you so beautifully are able to do. But then we have Saturn here, Saturn in Cancer, who does not do things without cost, and who can be very restrictive and oppressive if love is not returned. It's a very conditional love, Marcia. And I think that that's something that you're going to need to work on throughout the life, is understanding the difference between what it means to stand up and offer your heart freely to those who need it, while maintaining your boundaries, healthy boundaries, and understanding when your love is not wanted. Right? And then also understanding that if you push past those boundaries and you overgive when love is not just not wanted but not needed, then you start to build this very dry, very bitter, very intense, rock in the pit of your stomach resentment that only Saturn would be able to pull forward. Right? So that's a life lesson that I'm sure you've had to master many times over in your life, as anybody with strong Cancer placements has had to go through. But for you specifically, because it's so close to your ascendant, you know, there is big lessons here in that department. How to give and receive love in equal proportion. I really like a strong Sun in Leo in the second. It does give you, it does make you a little bit prone to shopping spree. It does make you prone to surrounding yourself with nice things, whether or not you can afford them. But after 50, when that Pluto in Leo matures in the second house of finance, you'll really start to learn how to master your money. So I like that. Then we come to this third house, and this third house is really where your chart starts to get very fascinating, because the ruler of your chart is here. Your moon in Virgo in the third house of writing and teaching and communication. But you've conjoined the moon with Jupiter in Virgo, who's in the sign of his fall. It's Jupiter, the planet of expansion, who's in the conditional and kind of restricted sign of Virgo. And then you have Mercury in Virgo, who's not just ruling the house, but who is literally the archetype of communication, but he's backwards. He's retrograde, right? So it's all of this need to express, this need to share, this need to be vocal, this need to get your message out there. But then everything seems to be oppressed. Everything seems to be held back, filtered within an inch of its creative life. Um, and I'm not sure if that's appropriate. Not sure if that's appropriate. Censorship might be a really big issue here. Um, but I do think you're on the right track in that department. You don't necessarily need to censor, but you do need to speak in allegory. You do need to speak in hidden messages. You do need to not necessarily come out and say what you mean, but allude to it, right? Give them that Jupiter abundance, but make it small. Make the lessons more concise, precise, intentional, right? But don't not tell the story. Don't leave out the juicy bits. You know, you don't need to omit all the sex, all the gore, all the lust, all of the rawness from your creative work. Instead, you just need to learn how to speak about it in creative ways. Speaking of sex, the fifth house of sexuality is ruled by Mars and Gemini, and the 12th paired with Uranus. I think that sexuality as a whole is something that needs to be kind of rectified in the chart, because it is in the house of hidden enemies, as well as the topic of children and parenting. You know, it's a pretty sensitive topic for your chart, and rectifying those lessons, especially as you having so much of that maternal Cancer on your first house ascendant. You know, the idea of you potentially not being able to have children, or things in the child department having issue there, but also, you know, fifth house is the house of creativity. And again, we see the Lord of creativity being Mars locked away in the 12th house of hidden enemies and karmic healing, the need to cook those lessons more, so that they break down and are easier to digest. So many interesting facets. Remember, Marcia, that a spouse is not just somebody who you take care of for the rest of your life, right? Or somebody who's obligated to take care of you, right? You're not simply grabbing the nearest person who has half a heart and saying, well, you can fulfill my needs. Here we go. We're in love, right? You seem like a good candidate to cook and clean and, you know, take care of me when I'm sick. Let's go ahead and build a life together. It's not supposed to be that practical. It's not supposed to be that driven by the need for love, in its most basic form, right? In an ideal relationship, you want somebody who's going to take care of you because they absolutely adore you and they want to preserve your life. Not just somebody who has a scrap of emotional intelligence, enough emotional intelligence to not, you know, let you die on the side of the road when you're having a bad day. So we need to kind of up your relationship standards in kind of all departments, and make sure that, again, back to that Cancer ascendant, you are worthy of love. You are worthy of nice things. You are worthy of creative expression. But there are also rules and stipulations in your chart that remind you, yeah, that it's important to make sure that you understand that you're not falling backwards due to your own perception, due to your own vices, due to your own misunderstandings. Yeah. And really understanding as a whole, that you are worthy of love. I think that's kind of the crux of the chart. And because you are worthy of love, you are also worthy of nice things. Your voice is worthy of expressing itself, and you are worthy of healing and growth and progress. We just need to make sure that you're doing it in a way that is most healthy for you, and that you're not settling, right? Because your chart does not deserve to settle with how compassionate and ready to give to the world you are. You deserve to be repaid for that. And not just repaid, but to enjoy that repayment. Not just kind of paying a bill, but, you know, having people, places, and things in your life that actually add value, that really hit your soul in a way that makes you feel warm and fuzzy, and not just kind of checking a list and meeting a quota. Excellent. So that is Marcia's chart. Thank you so much, Marcia, for donating your chart to science. That is pretty much about it for the live stream today. We've gone through our 5 charts. Thank you to everybody who has been watching on Instagram and Facebook. We will return on Friday morning to do this again. If you would like to submit your chart to the live stream, feel free to private message me your birth date, birthplace, exact birth time. I will add you to the list. The list is rather long, so please be patient, but I will message you when your chart is featured. I'm also a professional astrologer and I teach astrology, so go to my website, scorpiorisingastrology.com. You can click on the consultations page for my price list and session request form, as well as if you're interested in learning astrology, I have online classes that are pre-recorded, everything Astrology 101 basics, some herbal energetics, medical astrology, advanced stuff, lots of things to choose from. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, as well as TikTok. I'm doing free sun, moon, and rising sign readings on TikTok. That's super fun and turning out to be quite viral. But yeah, until next time, I'll let you get on with the rest of your hump day, and may the stars be ever in your favor.